GOZ, getting off zero. That is the starting point of one's goals and aspirations. To give people a step-by-step blueprint of how they can get their dreams and aspirations from their brain and from their dreams into reality. We're going to use some examples from the Harlem Renaissance, from Black Wall Street, the Black Bottom area of Detroit, some of the gold empires of West Africa, to give people some tangible examples of how they can create the life for themselves that they want. We're going to address some of the daunting issues that are going on, the high unemployment rate, the high crime rate, the low literacy rate. We're going to give people some answers on how they can improve themselves and get out of these traps that seem to be stifling so many people in urban America.
Because all history, I repeatedly say, is a current event. And if you don't understand the present, you're not going to understand the past. And we have lost too many things in our life that influence our economics. And the one thing that used to influence our church, the economics of our church, for the women in the church. In the midst of all of those women, there inevitably was a woman we call Big Mama. With the decline of Big Mama-ism, something went out of our culture. We're listening to foreigners in their talk. We're listening to nonsense about what men don't let women tell them to do. We lost something.
What has allowed Jewish Americans and Chinese Americans, and yes, Jamaican Americans, to thrive in America, even though they had language and cultural challenges that most African American families never face? Well, the key word is family. If you have more shoes than books in your home, think about what message you're giving to your children. The common point that Jewish, Chinese, and yes, Jamaican families have is the understanding that cash and education go hand in hand. Think about this. The grandchildren of slaves became the Tuskegee Airmen, the black fighter pilots that helped America win the Second World War. The U.S. government recruited black pilots from colleges all over the country. They were the best and the brightest that America had to offer. And 2 generations out of slavery, black Americans produced the best pilots on the planet. How can it be 145 years after slavery, the high school dropout rate in many major American cities among African American young men is over 50%? Families make communities, and when the family unit falls apart, the neighborhood or community will fall apart. There was once a time when blacks, like all other minorities or immigrants, saw their life's work to be to build a better life for the future generations. We once knew, although father may be a garbage man and mother may be a maid, their kids could become doctors, lawyers, or business people. Although there is a segment of the black community that has continued this tradition and each generation is progressing quite nicely, the majority of black families in America's big cities are actually going backwards financially. As stated earlier, when the black doctors and lawyers moved out of the black neighborhoods after integration, they took with them many of the family role models and blueprints of what it takes to succeed in America. 60 years ago, a struggling black family had hopes because they had lots of examples of successful blacks that came from the same struggle situation that they had to. A black youth growing up in those neighborhoods, again, had all types of role models to decide who he wanted to model his life after. I speak of a day when in the black community, each family felt a responsibility to each child in the neighborhood. Maybe you have heard some of your elders speak about a time when if a child misbehaved on the block, any neighborhood might spank him and then take him to his parents, inform his parents of his misbehavior, where another spanking would be administered by the parents. Now let's talk about today. When the child curses in public or is wearing his pants hanging off his ass, no one says anything. Well, as in so many cases, the same problems that harm and haunt Africa are the same problems that harm and haunt African Americans. In America, after the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, there was a brain drain also in the large black cities. The best and the brightest blacks left the cities for the suburbs, leaving the inner city void of role models, and neighborhoods left leadershipless. Maybe there was a teacher or two remaining, maybe one or two small businessmen remaining, but mostly what developed were neighborhoods comprised of single mothers raising families. Of course, we know that many of the black men that should have been there, unfortunately, have become incarcerated or afflicted with many other social issues. Generation by generational progress is a sound path to ensure the betterment of a family, a neighborhood, and a culture in general. We know we must address those issues, and we will address those issues as we continue to find ways to get off zero.